Pod SaaS, where we're putting the SaaS back in SaaSy. Sponsored by LeadrPro, where you can book demos with target customers on demand and fill your sales pipeline instantly.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Pod SaaS. I'm your host, Chris Shang, and today we have Abhijeet from Nectar.ai based in Singapore. How are you doing, Abhijeet?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thank you for having me over. Excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We've had a few international guests, but none from Singapore. So I'm curious to dive into a little bit more about how tech-friendly and startup-friendly Singapore is. But before we do that, why don't you just tell us a little bit about Nectar? Give us the brief elevator pitch, as well as who you imagine your target customers to be, because I believe that you guys are still currently in stealth mode and about to launch the product, right? So give us a little bit of insight around that.
So Nectar is a no-code revenue operations platform that helps to unlock predictable revenue growth for today's modern GTM teams. So what's typically has happened in the last couple of years, as you look at B2B sales has gone digital, right? So there's scattered data, there are siloed tools, there are distributed teams. CRM is supposed to be the system of record, but nobody updates it. The existing data in CRM decays and it always stays incomplete. So that doesn't help anybody there, right? And revenue operations team is someone who tries to fix all of that, to connect the dots, bring all of this together through systems, process, data, connections. So Nectar helps them at the core by connecting the dots, bringing the missing data back into CRM and using that to generate GTM insights that helps the teams do their job better. So that's about Nectar. I basically got this idea from my past experience. I've been a salesperson myself. I used to be an account executive first, then became a sales manager, grew up to be a VP of sales, and then later on a board member at my previous company. We grew from a 0 to 40 million ARR. So that was an incredible journey for me, a lot of learning, and faced a lot of these problems firsthand. So I decided to build something in this space myself. So that's what led to Nectar, and we started off in Feb of 2020.
Wow, congratulations on the success so far. So you guys have been heads down primarily building product for the past, I would say, like 2 years?
We started off here in Singapore. That's where the core founding team is. So we initially did a lot of research in the Asian market, most of 2020. And then obviously COVID was unfolding in front of us, right? So the whole world of B2B sales also changed along with it. The future of work was right in front of us. I think Satya Nadella very famously said in 2020 that we have seen a decade's worth of digital transformation in one single year. Yeah. And that happened for B2B sales as well. So we had a lot of learning there and try to understand the new process, how people were working, how salespeople were working, how buyers were buying. And then we realized that we need to look at a global opportunity. And that's where we started looking at North America as a key market. Most of our investors are from North America. It's a big market. So 2021, we decided to focus and prioritize on North America and been building the product for the market from the very beginning. And we very quickly built the product out, got happy users, and now we got paying customers, been on stealth mode, building heads down and executing. But we're looking forward to launch the product later this year.
Yeah, I'm really curious as to diving more about that, because you're speaking my language. We have a growth marketing agency that we are now building a product for, productizing some of the go-to-market motions that we've experienced and had success with. So, really curious to see how you guys are doing things a little bit differently. But before we dive into that, let's just get to know you a little bit better as a person and just put a face to and a personality behind Nectar. So we like to do what we call a series of rapid fire questions. Nothing too crazy, pretty light, pretty fun. So if you're up for it, we can get things started there.
Very keen to know what questions you have for me.
Nothing crazy. We'll start things off really, really easy. Just, do you have a favorite entrepreneur, or like a favorite startup story?
There are no guesses there. I mean, Steve Jobs, I really admire him, like most of the other entrepreneurs do. Especially the product thinking there. Yeah.
When you say product thinking, elaborate a little bit more, because there's so many facets to, I think the two common answers are like Steve Jobs and then Elon Musk, right? But their personalities have so many facets to it. And I think like it's, I'm curious as to, what part of the personalities did you cling on to about Steve Jobs?
I like one thing that gets said, that if you look at the microwave, the only useful button is the plus 30 second, right? But you see so many things on it, right? So as product people, we overcomplicate stuff. So that was a key takeaway for me. I mean, there are like various things that he has done, said, and his work speaks a lot on Apple's success that we all see today. But yeah, I think this whole simplicity and like user experience is a big inspiration for me when I look up to someone like him.
Growing up as a kid, like 8, 9, 10 years old, what did you want to be?
So I wanted to be a cricketer. I mean, I grew up in India
Uh-huh.
and cricket is a popular sport there. So I really wanted to be a cricketer or a sports person more so. But yeah, cricket was something I played a lot. I wanted to be that. Yeah.
Have you continued to play that sport, or have you taken a back seat?
I do other things now. I run a lot
Mhm.
because that's something I can do while I'm traveling.
Mhm.
You can go for a quick 30-minute run and you can do it on your own, right? With cricket, you need a team, right? You need to
Yeah.
like play in a team of 11 and you need an opposition as well. So it gets difficult to coordinate and meet and like manage the group and all. So, and it's a yeah, it's like golf, right? It takes like almost a full day out. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and running works more for me these days.
Cool. Next question here we have is most painful experience, and I'll give us some context because I think what I've typically seen through personal and professional growth. Usually, like the most exponential growth comes from you know out of uncomfortable situations or when we've been like kind of like backed up against the wall and you have to get really really creative around problem solving. Any kind of experiences, it could be personal, professional, what have you, painful or otherwise, where you've gone through and maybe during that time it was just like a horrendous experience, but then in hindsight you can see like that was like a pivotal or instrumental moment, a point of inflection for you.
There were a couple of painful moments that way to remember. I mean, obviously, a bunch of learning we all have as we grow up and go through our careers and personal lives. But for me, on the professional front, I was a salesperson myself, as I mentioned to you, right? So I absolutely hated firing salespeople, right? So I mean, but finally, you're running a business and they're back-to-back quarters. You have to deliver 2 quarters in a row. If you don't deliver, you don't make it into the third quarter, right? So it happens all the time. So I've been through that. I've seen that pressure. But when I was a manager or a VP sales, I had to be in those shoes to like take those decisions. So that was tough. But I always like and I had to like lay off a couple of friends as well. I mean, some of these folks we worked together, and so that was very hard. But I had a big revelation at the time that I mean, while we had to take the business decision, but I felt that the organization can do a better job in enabling salespeople and set them up for success. Right?
Mm-hmm.
When you look at salespeople in general, I mean, we expect them to work for the tools and not the other way around. Like tools should work for the humans and not humans working for the tools. So, I mean, that's where I just felt that there should be something that should be built which makes the life of salesperson easier, which should make them successful rather than them working for a CRM system or a different tool of that sort. So for me, that experience was like foundational to starting up Nectar when I had to like really take those emotional decisions as well. Obviously, although there was business context to them, and I decided to go after building a product like Nectar, which was a inspirational story. And then I came across this article from Forbes where 57% of the sales reps meet their quota every year. So that means 43% are missing. And salespeople like work on a very high commission model. So if they are not meeting their commissions, they will have a difficult time. So I just felt that there is a big opportunity to help so many professionals out there who are like the main oil for the revenue engine of the organization, right? So they bring the money home. I just felt that there's a big opportunity to do something in the space, and that's how that pain point that I had like drove me to start Nectar. On the personal front, I missed clearing the competitive exam. In India, we have a very competitive educational system. We have to clear competitive exams. So there's a very popular competitive exam called Indian Institute of Technology Joint Entrance Exam. So and back in 2002 when I appeared for it for the first time, I didn't make it. So that was heartbreaking. I put in a lot of effort for like 3 years preparing for it, and so I mean it was like a dream shattering experience at that time. But yeah, my parents supported me and they backed me, and then I took another attempt the next year and I could like clear it. But there, I think my learning was persistence. Let's show up every day and then just keep focusing on the process will work for you. Yeah, you might miss out in the first attempt, but like if you are true to the process, you'll see the result. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good learning. Um, Awesome. So, starting a business is hard, right? There's a lot of times when your back's against the wall, trying to get to market fit, those kinds of things. What if anything, particularly motivates you in like that 25th hour?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the big goal is the vision with which we started Nectar. I mean, if you go to our LinkedIn page, you'll see we write about it. We want to democratize quota attainment. I mean, that's what we started with. We want to make those reps successful who are missing quota, who missed their paycheck last quarter, right? So the vision is that. So I mean, it's quite inspiring to all of us. We want to do that, and the broader vision for the company, if I had to extend it further, is to make humans work more productively, right? I mean, so we start with salespeople, make them successful, make them productive, but we can like help so many professionals out there in the long run. So it's a very motivating factor. So I mean, then I just look at the big picture, and that big picture always helps. And I personally draw a lot of inspiration from sports. So and I'm a marathon runner myself. So in marathon running, you don't look at short term, right? I mean, there are a lot of short term pains you go through, but in the end, you complete the marathon. So you need to just stay put and believe in the process. So I mean, the big picture always helps you get inspired.
I love the fact that you're a marathon runner. I recently picked up running myself as somebody who never ran before. And I did 2 ultra marathons in October of last year in the same month. But it was a very intense experience for myself. But I find it very cathartic.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, for sure. That said, let's just, being in the CEO role, coming from a background, sales heavy background, right? Like, I know that you have to typically wear a lot of hats as a founder, especially out the gate. Has there been any skill set that you've picked up along the way as a CEO, as a founder? Because it's a very different type of role that you either loved or hated, but had a strong like emotional connection either way.
You have to unlearn a lot when you become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
The first thing is you need to unlearn a lot. Obviously, I mean, your core background helps. For me, I mean, sales is my core background, consultative selling to that extent. So sales has been like a life skill for me here, where I've been able to use that skill to like sell to investors or sell to potential employees, my co-founder, sell to the early customers who believed on like the idea and like trusted us with their data, their systems, and their time to try the product, and the new customers were like paying for the product, right? So you have to sell all the time, right? So I think for me that selling skill really helped. But the other way around, when I look at the entrepreneurship experience, I think what I've learned more, and which is painful but very interesting, is I mean, yeah, you need to be very patient. You need to be very patient, right? I mean, you like to do 1,000 things in one day, but you obviously cannot like do all of those. And you need to like stay focused and focus on the big picture and what matters today, right? What will move the needle. So you need to always like show up, roll the ball, then go to the next day, show up, roll the ball. So you need to be very patient, and then you need to be also very humble, right? Because rejections will happen all the time and from everyone, right? So you need to have a lot of humility as an entrepreneur to be successful, in my opinion. And you need to have that learning mindset. You need to be like a sponge which absorbs everything, because the buck stops at you. So I mean, so these are some of the things that I've like felt personally when I became an entrepreneur, which is a big change from being like a VP sales.
Especially within like building a sales enablement tool. I feel like it's one of the missing components. I think a lot of times when people think sales is like the idea of like emotional intelligence or EQ, right? Like, how valuable do you consider that in the hiring process or as part of like your team building when you're pulling people together?
Yeah, I mean, so if my opinion about sales is it's art and science both, right? There is a lot of art to it in terms of how you present, how you articulate, how you build relationships, how do you manage the whole situation, and how do you run into competition and handle that. And then there is the science to it, where you look at data, you look at process, you are systematic, you are basically following through, right? You're showing up. So I think successful salespeople have a good blend of both. That they are great with this whole combination of art and science, and they and as you go up, like you become managers and leaders, you basically see them more data driven as well, and so it helps. When we look at Nectar, and we're trying to build a culture. I try to bring some of these learnings I've had as a salesperson. So for us, and we are a remote first company. We work from anywhere. We got like 7 different nationalities spread across 6 different countries, and in 2 different time zones. So for us, I think it's even more important to make sure that we follow certain process and standards, which I think help in with sales, and that's something which I brought into Nectar as well. Whether we evaluate a candidate or where we like operate, so we make sure that there's a written documentation, there's a process that's very clear, so there's no room for subjectivity or misinterpretation, if you may call it. So that's something which we do. Second is we want to make sure that we basically are quite disciplined with our iterating on the product, on our users, going to the market. So I think that discipline also helps, because sales runs with a proper cadence, right? I mean, you have to follow up on a regular basis. You do weekly meetings, you do weekly forecast, and all of that. And the same culture really helps. I could even bring that culture onto engineering, where we do those meetings. I know nothing about coding or like managing an engineering team initially. So now I've learned a bit, again, their language, how it works. But I think for me, I could bring in like the aspects around cadence, aspect around like user focus and things like those. So we try to bring in some of these best practices into our culture itself. So when we evaluate the people who want to join us, or when they come on board, how we operate with them. So it really helps. And finally, I think it's important to have fun. I mean, salespeople have a very high pressure job, and but you'll see that they also have a lot of fun. You basically get that sales high, if you may call it one, as you close that elusive deal, right? And then you celebrate. So that fun is there. I mean, fun should never go away. So I think we bring in that fun element as well. So we look at that in people's personality also. That are you disciplined? Are you able to like follow process? Are you clear with your communications? And then we need to also have fun, because it's a marathon, right? Startups are not a 1 or 2 year journey. They are like 8 to 10 year journey and more. So yeah, these are some of the things that we try to leverage. Yeah.
Got it. On a more personal note, what's been one of your proudest moments, or one of your greatest accomplishments thus far?
For me, it was taking the leap to startup. It was a big leap. It was a difficult choice. I was doing quite well in my previous company, and it was heading towards an IPO. I also had a few job offers in front of me from some of the largest B2B software companies, like 7-figure paychecks and all. So I had to like say no to a lot of those things, and take the uncharted territory of being an entrepreneur. So, and I got a lot of support from the ecosystem, from my family, from my friends, my colleagues, to get started, and from the fellow entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. So, I take pride in starting up, because world needs more entrepreneurs. It will be a better world if there are more of us. But it's a hard journey. So I appreciate it even more every passing day, and I appreciate other founders who've been there, done that, whether they've been successful or not successful, but people who have tried it. I think it takes a lot of courage. So respect to all the entrepreneurs there. So that's been like a proud moment for me. And yeah, another one from a sales standpoint was when I closed a very large deal. It was an $11 million deal that I closed, which was the largest deal I'd ever closed as a salesperson. And there's a lot of learning. It took me 19 months to close the deal. That was also a big sense of professional pride. Yeah.
What's one of the most ambitious items on your bucket list?
Yeah, there were a few of them have been ticked, and few of them I need to do. So yeah. I've done skydiving. That was something which is off the list. Okay. I wanted to do a marathon that I've done. I want to do Ironman. I think that's something which is there. I would really want to challenge myself. But before I do that, I need to learn swimming. So, for me, the issue is that I've never picked up swimming. I know it's a life skill, and it's compulsory in most countries, but where I grew up, I never got a chance to like learn it. So, this year my goal is to like first learn swimming, and then I think once I become good at it, then attempt an Ironman. Yeah.
I love like the idea of fitness, because I feel like it's a very tangible, realization. It's one of those things you can't BS yourself on. It's either you're you're learning it and you're accomplishing it, or you're not, and it's going to show in the outcome. So it's one of the things I've equated to, I think, like professionally, where it's sometimes not as tangible, like in terms of what you're trying to get to in milestones, right? Last question here, and it's an important one, but it's the idea of legacy. More importantly than that, though, like what kind of impact would you want to leave on this world before you leave it?
Yeah, I mean, I like to be remembered as somebody who cared, somebody who loved. I like to look at glass half full. So I would like people to remember me for the positivity, the positive mindset. I'm a big believer in where there is a will, there is a way. So I would like people to remember me as somebody who never gave up. And I want to be remembered as an innovator and somebody who took the road less traveled.
That is it for the rapid fire questions. But I think you spoke a lot in terms of where Nectar is and the origination for the idea of Nectar, and why you're the man to build it. So I think like diving a little bit more into like that pre-journey, you climbing up the corporate ranks and leading up from managing people, starting off as a salesperson and becoming a manager, VP of sales, right? Taking more of responsibilities, evolving into more of a manager than necessarily like an executor. So tell me a little bit about that. How did you get involved into sales? As a kid who wanted to be a cricketer, how did you get into sales in the very beginning? Let alone start building a company that's centered around the idea of sales.
It goes back to the time when I graduated. So I'm a chemical engineer. I went to Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, and it's the same college where you have Sundar Pichai from. So I mean, when I graduated, there are a lot of like ambitions around what I can do in chemical engineering. So I took up a role at a company called Larsen and Toubro in Mumbai. Where I wanted to build something around clean energy, right? So we had like a Shark Tank equivalent in the company where we had to pitch our ideas and get funded and we could start something. So it was a very interesting opportunity. So I was like an entrepreneur in residence at that company, and I pitched this idea about like mixing hydrogen with natural gas. You can use the blended fuel to power automobiles with a clean energy source. So that was like a sort of an idea. So my entrepreneurial roots were like formed sort of there. It was like back in 2007. So we tried that for 3 years, and we were very focused on product and engineering and like it was a hardware product idea, right? Okay. So it was super hard to pull off. But we built a good prototype that worked. It was very successful. But we realized that when we took it to market, there were a lot of like challenges with respect to ecosystem, whether ecosystem will adopt it, oil ministry, energy ministry, environment ministry, automobile lobby, and then like the cost of the fuel, right? I mean, it needs to be at least same, if not less than the existing alternatives, although it was a cleaner energy source and a better source. So yeah, I mean, that was a very hard learning around GTM. And the reason I went back to this was that I learned the importance of go-to-market in a very hard way, because we couldn't take that product to a commercial viability while it was successful technically. So that was my big learning, that GTM is important. So from being like a technical guy, I started appreciating the commercial aspect of business as well. So I wanted to then move into like something a little bit more fast paced and where I can like try to get into go to market. So B2B SaaS was very new. This was back in 2010, 2011. I mean, Salesforce was a successful company, and then we're seeing Atlassian and a few other companies being very successful. They were like, I think probably 9 unicorns at that time. I mean, if you look at it, it was a very, very early days of SaaS. And I got into a company called Capillary Technologies, which was probably amongst the first 5 or 10 SaaS companies out of India back in like early 2011. So I joined them and I did customer success initially. They had found sort of a product market fit, and they wanted somebody to help around and make the customer successful using the product. So I did that first to learn the product, learn about SaaS, learn about like how users use the SaaS product. And that was very interesting. And I learned a lot of use cases on what people appreciate. And because I understood those use cases well, I could actually go and help salespeople sell deals. So I would go with my founder, and there were like no other salespeople. They're just the founder, and I was going and joining him and selling the product and helping them sell. So he actually said, "Why don't you move into sales?" And I moved into sales then. And that was my like start in the sales career, which is 2013. From a customer success, I got pulled out there, and I was quite successful early on. Like, I mean, because I knew the product in and out, I knew the use cases, I knew what customers or users appreciated, so could close a lot of deals very early on, and I sort of liked it. I mean, I was enjoying the thrill of like closing, and yeah, went after like closing one deal after the next, and like became very successful, and we started growing. We raised a series around, and then we scaled very fast. And yeah, I mean, there's no looking back. So for the last 9 years, I've been into sales. That's how my career transitioned. And then being an individual contributor, then I was managing a 52 member quota carrying sales team across 16 different countries.
And then you got this idea based on this experience of working in sales at Capillary Technologies for the past 9 years, and kind of like all the broken processes or the fragmented processes that you had to go and endure. So, how do you make this decision from idea to then making the leap to actually going and building it, right? Like, walk me through the ideation for it, and then how long from ideation to actually like pulling the trigger, leaving the company, because that's a big it's a big decision, especially when you've been at some place for like 9+ years. It's all you've kind of known, especially around the sales world, like and you're getting these great opportunities, 7-figure type of opportunities. How do you make that decision at all?
That's why I take pride in like taking the plunge. Yeah, it was a tough decision, but I was very passionate about like solving this problem around sales productivity, because day in and day out, I was just thinking about, okay, the solution of hyper growth is not just hiring more salespeople. There is a better way out, right? I mean, if you look at the sales velocity formula, also, it's basically number of opportunities, win rate, and then how fast you close the deal, and the value of the deal, right?
Yeah.
So you have these four levers to play with to bring in more revenue per day or per month or per quarter. So what you can influence from it. So I was looking at it, being an engineer, I was looking at it more mathematically, and then looking at how that can be taken into like a process, or use that to drive focus from an area of improvement standpoint. So I had set up a sales operations function. I set up a sales enablement function apart from managing a sales team. And those were early days of sales ops, or revenue operations, as today people call it. Very few people use the term also, like 6-7 years back.
Yeah.
But it was very popular for bigger companies, right? So if you look at the likes of Dell, Oracle, HP, all the large companies like SAP, they have a huge sales operations team, and they've been doing this for many decades. But for fast growing mid-market teams, they don't have the know-how, they don't have the time, they don't have the team and resources to be able to do it, or invest their time into it. So I just felt that I mean, the function sales ops or revenue operations is a very important key function, and it's an unsung hero in most sales organizations to support the team. So let's do something with them. And then I've been using a lot of sales tools myself, being a user and a buyer of tools. So I was always like curious about what are the new tools and what they are doing, and what problem they are solving. And I just saw that most tools don't even see adoption. Half the sales tools that we also used, like nobody was adopting them, and that's the truth in the market. And then finally, you have to like keep letting go of like 10 to 20% of your team every quarter or so, and then like keep baking in that inefficiency into your quota plan. So if you look at typical forecasts that are being made, you'll probably take a buffer, right? So if you're to hit like 100, then you'll probably roll out 140 or 150 as a quota, right, to across your team, because you assume that people will miss their quota.
Yeah.
You're not looking at that. If we hit 100 with the team last year, can we hit 120 this year, right? So that thought process is not there, because it's easier to hire more people and then like probably throw people at the problem. So I just felt that there's a better way of doing it. So that's why I became like a student of sales productivity and revenue operations, for that matter. Spent a lot of time figuring things out. And I had an interesting insight that like the most important thing here is like past data, or data for you to take timely actions, and which generally should be present in CRM system. But CRMs need to be updated by somebody manually. A human needs to update it every day, and that never happens, right? I mean, salespeople will never update the CRM the way the organization want them to update it, when they would want them to update it. It won't happen. So I just felt that there is a big opportunity here to fix this gap. So we started looking at the data angle, and then data is also like getting scattered, right? With digital sales coming in B2B, there's so much of digital workload that is generated, digital conversations, communications, and the data points, they will never enter CRM. or you have to like do a patchwork, and that's where revenue operations team keeps like focusing on. So we just had this interesting insight, and I just felt that okay, it's a powerful enough idea for me to get started. The ultimate goal for us is to like use the data and first fix the data, because that's the key thing to do, and then use that to guide the user to next best action. So it will be like an ultimate guided selling platform down the line, which basically will guide you to next best action. So think of it like a Siri for sales or Alexa for sales. That would be the ultimate product that we are going after, the big vision. But in order to get there, I mean, we start with like, let's make the data better, and then we'll get people to get the right insights to take those actions. So that's been the journey in terms of like ideation to like starting up and then coming up with the idea that we are currently working on.
From realizing that there was this problem, having the idea that there's got to be a better way, to then like making the decision to leave the company, how long of that period is there?
As a user, I mean, if you have so much pain living through it, you'll ultimately decide to solve it, right? If nobody is solving it, let me go ahead and solve it. So it is something like that. So I would say subconsciously it's been there for quite some time, but I got a conviction in, I think 2019, when I like literally had to lay off a few people. I just felt really bad. I just felt that okay, I mean, we need to do a like better enablement for these people, but in order to do that, I need better data to take decisions. I need to take timely actions, and that's not there because CRM is not updated. So it's all got interlinked, and I just felt that okay, let's just go and try fix this and see how it goes. And the trigger point for me was this Forbes article where I just came across. It just popped up on my Google news, which was like 57% of AEs missed quota in the North American market. And yeah, I mean, there I was. I mean, I just thought, okay, we have to solve it. It's a global problem. It's not just a local problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a real problem, and I think like, and a lot of it is that, that the CRM is not being populated with the right data. And, a lot of times I think it's also part of it is that the sales processes, especially in mid-market, changes so frequently that it's like, it's hard to keep some kind of consistency in terms of process across the entire company, right? It's almost like sometimes, you have AEs that are doing everything from prospecting all the way to closing deals. And in some cases, handling some form of customer success. And so it's like they're doing all these little things all the time, and and it's happening in all different channels, all kinds of different platforms, and it's not being consolidated because it takes time to consolidate it into one place. It's almost like an EHR system for doctors, right? Where it's like, one thing to see the patient, diagnose the patient. It's another thing entirely to take those notes, put into a system where they can get reimbursed by insurance companies, in order for them to get paid for that time. So it's like a lot of, I get the broken processes there.
It's across functions, right? So there are like these systems of records which are present in like every function, whether it's sales, HR, marketing, and then like, I mean, users are pained, right? Users are pained with inefficiency and productivity problems. So there's a big benefit in like using AI, leveraging machine learning, because now the technology exists. I mean, which can work in a way to like tie all of these things together and then deliver the value to these users which they've been looking for many decades.
So you read this Forbes article, and so how long after that Forbes article did you decide to quit your job and then move into starting this business? And walk me through, how you went about starting Nectar. Was it something where you had, maybe started getting some validation points by talking to potential customers, before actually leaving, or what was the process there? Did you have a co-founder? Did you get like a pre-seed round in, something that gave you like a signal that this is something that you needed to go out and actually do and give you the confidence to do it?
So yeah, it took me like a week since I read that article, because it was like brimming and simmering for quite some time, and then like suddenly it started boiling. So I just said that I have to do it. It's one life, and yeah, I want to be an entrepreneur, and I have the problem I'm passionate about. So I basically resigned. I got a lot of support from my former employer. I mean, 3 of my board members invested in me. I mean, they were angel investors. So that was like a good encouragement, I would say. I mean, I did not even discuss the idea. It was more about, okay, you are starting up, we'll support you. So it was like the trust factor that you're doing something, and I'm sure you'll figure it out. And then I spoke to a few co-founder candidates. The guy I finally chose was somebody who I know for 17 years. In fact, now 19 years. So this guy basically it was my roommate from college. We studied together for 4 years. After that, he went to IIM Ahmedabad where he did his MBA. But he's techie at heart, so he wanted to come back to coding, and he's been an entrepreneur. So this is his third stint. He's done two startups before, so he's more experienced than me from an entrepreneur standpoint. And we also were colleagues for a year at my former employment. So Arvind is my co-founder, Arvind RS, and we worked together also for a year where he was a product manager and I was like the salesperson. So we've been friends. We studied together. Then like he's got the right pedigree and the right uh, knowledge about the space, and then we also work together. So there's a lot of comfort there, because fundamentally when you build a core team, you need like the trust, right? I mean, you need to have that trust which goes the long way forward. So yeah, I got him with me, and then the two of us, like he quit Zendesk. That was his last company after like his two startup attempts. He was working with Zendesk as a senior tech lead, and he was working on like an architecture which was bringing data together from a support standpoint, service standpoint. And I just discussed with him about the sales use case. He said it's exciting. Let's build it. So we got together, and yeah, I mean, a few investors approached us. Nexus Venture Partners actually wrote the first check. They are a prominent B2B SaaS investor in the US Asia corridor, and the Jishnu and Anand from Nexus were our first couple of institutional investors. So they gave us a pre-seed check of $2 million. So that was a big validation that the problem is big. There's a confidence in the team. There's a proven track record. Arvind and I were very complementary. I come from GTM side. He comes from product side. And yeah, we got started and built a founding engineering team and started working on the problem statement. And last year we got like preempted for a seed round, which was led by B Capital Group, and Nexus Venture Partners doubled down along with 314 Capital. So we had like three new institutional investors. We raised a 6 million seed as well. So altogether we raised like around 8.1 million in seed funding in a couple of years of start. So that's been quite a bit of encouragement.
Gives you plenty of runway too to be very product focused in terms of like delivering something that creates high value, right? So and then obviously some kind of IP around what it is that you guys are building. So that definitely helps a lot to have that pre-seed funding come in. In terms of where you guys are today, right? Like where are you in terms of like traction, and how do you plan to do your own like GTM strategy? You know, in terms of scaling this product out, and how far are you from really like going full scale on the growth?
I mean, this is the part I'm most excited about. I mean, being a salesperson, I mean, raring to go, but yeah, I have to be, as I mentioned, the biggest transition was to like be patient. I mean, I had to learn that as an entrepreneur. So being very product focused, as you rightly pointed out, because it's important to focus on the user, and we are very clear. Our ethos on a product side are to build something what people love. I mean, Y Combinator talks about it a lot. So a lot of like inspiration we take there. Also, although we never applied to YC because we already got our funding and we had started up, but we followed them what they've been like teaching around from a startup school standpoint, and use some of those best practices to like focus on customer discovery first. Spoke to around 150 different users across different markets. So VP of sales, chief revenue officer, head of revenue operations. So we took our time like to understand that, like also spend time doing market analysis. So that's why I picked up North America, and yeah, decided to work on it, and initially worked with a few selected design partners. That's why you see us in the stealth mode, because we wanted to be hyper focused rather than like selling to everybody, pitching to everyone. We just wanted to make sure that we work with some key customers and make them successful first before we go into selling it to everybody. So yeah, that was the initial process. And yeah, earlier this Jan, we started monetizing, and we got paying customers now, and we got like thousands of users using the product across multiple customers in 6 different countries, and predominant businesses coming from North America. So I'm in the process of moving there. I mean, by end of this year, I'll be there. So I currently shuttle between the West Coast and Singapore, but I'll be also moving there. We just got our first AE on board in the US, who's a founding AE, hiring another AE in the East Coast as well. hiring ahead of growth. So I think some of that team building is happening now as we speak. So got a good validation with our existing customers and users. All of them have renewed. All our pilots have been successful, and now, like with that confidence, we want to go into the market. So we'll come out of the stealth mode sometime later this year, where we do a public launch. And yeah, from there we'll be off to races. So idea is to go aggressive from there.
On a last note here, as we kind of like wrap things up, just would love to know what your thoughts are in terms of where you see the company, let's say like 5-6 years from now, right? Like, are you looking to build, a company for the next 10 years and really like realize the full potential and scope of what it is? Or are you looking to possibly find an exit strategy where, you're building it to a certain scale and then finding, a potential partner to acquire you at some point in time? Obviously different types of goals and depending upon the founder, both are respectable, but is there any path that you're looking for?
Yeah, we want to go the long haul. We want to like really go and build a massive company here because the space is big. The addressable market is massive. I mean, CRM alone, if you look at it, like was a very tiny market 10 years back, but now it's like exceptionally massive, right? I mean, Salesforce is at what, $25 billion and growing at 20 to 23% year on year still now. And what Salesforce did like 24 years back when they started was like brought CRM on the cloud, right? So that's, they basically democratized CRM across the world, where every business out there has a CRM system now, either Salesforce or an alternative, which is a cloud-based CRM system. What we see where the world is moving is you've got a system of record in CRM, right? You need a system of enablement, right? You need a system of enablement that makes people successful and not just a data entry system to update data. The system should work for the people, not people working for the system, which is what like you see in the conventional systems. And another trend that has come up is like collaboration, right? Because we are all digitally scattered. We are working in a hybrid way. So most of the older systems are not designed for that. Right? That's why they're acquiring different products, tools, communication engines to like bring in and integrate with all of these solutions. So we are thinking of it grounds up, like how there could be a system of enablement and collaboration, which sits on top of the CRM layer, right? Which makes salespeople do their work better, which basically makes GTM teams successful, right? So we believe that would happen in sales and it would happen across other functions as well. That's what future of work would look like. That's how the modern productivity systems will look like. And we see Nectar playing a big role there. So the target market is big. I mean, almost any business out there has a sales team. Any B2B business who has a product, solution, or service would need a sales team to sell the product, right? Even PLG companies need salespeople to assist and like sell the product, right? So sales is not going anywhere. You'll have like, it's an evergreen market. And if you build a proper system and a system that works for the salespeople, it's a top line impact, right? So money will be paid for a good product. So I mean, if we get it right, and we're quite confident we are on a good path and very confident. I think there's a massive business to be built here. So looking it for like going all the way.
Thank you for joining us. Congrats on where you've gotten to so far. Super excited to kind of see where you guys end up in the next few years here. It seems like a massive undertaking, but definitely something that is a huge market and something that I've dealt with too, in the companies that we've worked with, and knowing how fragmented that space is, and to be able to get everything into one central system of record is usually the biggest pain. So I think it's definitely a product I can see going a very far distance. And you have the experience and the know-how to build it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, we are excited. We're excited as hell. And yeah, we are going after building the product and the company and the business. And any of your listeners out there who would like to be part of the journey, we are hiring across all roles.
Okay.
So you can always ping me, and we'll be very happy to talk to anybody who's like-minded and who's passionate about solving this problem around sales productivity.
For sure. We'll definitely post the links up on all the streaming platforms as well as on YouTube, and be able to have somebody be able to connect with you if they have any interest.
Definitely. I really appreciate that, Chris. And thanks for having me over. Really enjoyed talking with you today, and especially the rapid fire questions.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much.